Let's talk about Hades. When you think of the Greek god of the underworld, what's the first image that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's a straight-up villain. But it turns out the real ruler of the underworld is probably one of the most misunderstood figures in all of mythology.
Right? For most of us, the name Hades immediately brings up this picture of a scheming bad guy, maybe with blue fire for hair, always plotting to take over Olympus. But what if I told you that this version we all know from movies and TV has almost nothing to do with the god the ancient Greeks actually knew?
I mean, just look at this. The difference is pretty huge. On one side, you've got our pop culture villain, always scheming, always evil. But on the other side, the mythological reality is, well, he was a passive, stern king who pretty much never left his kingdom. He wasn't some kind of devil figure, he was more like a force of nature. So how in the world did we get from one to the other? To figure that out, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah, it all kicks off with the legendary war that basically shaped the entire cosmos, and how Hades ended up with what is, let's be honest, the most infamous job in the entire divine world.
So long before he was the king of the dead, Hades was actually a war hero. Think about it. As the firstborn son, he was swallowed first by his own father, and was the last one to be freed. And for 10 solid years, he fought right alongside his brothers and sisters to overthrow the Titans. He even had his own superweapon, the Helm of Invisibility. So forget that whole idea of him being some evil outcast. This guy was a founding member of the whole Olympian order.
So after the Olympians finally won the war, the cosmos had to be divvied up. They decided to split the whole thing into 3 major realms.
Zeus, of course, got the sky. Poseidon took the sea, and Hades, well, he got the underworld. But here's the part everyone misses. They didn't get to choose. They literally drew lots. Hades got his kingdom purely by chance. This wasn't some kind of punishment, sending him to the cosmic basement. It was a legit, divinely appointed role that he won fair and square.
So he becomes a king by fate, not by choice. But what did that actually mean? What did ruling the underworld actually involve? What was on his job description?
Turns out, Hades' job wasn't about punishing souls or anything like that. It was basically administrative. His #1 most important duty was to maintain cosmic balance by making sure the dead stayed dead. He was a warden, not a torturer, and his one unbreakable rule was simple: nobody gets out. He almost never left his kingdom and, frankly, had very little interest in what was happening in the world above.
And just to be super clear about this, he wasn't even the god of death. That job belonged to another guy, Thanatos, who was the literal personification of death. Hades didn't cause death, he just managed the consequences. He was the one in charge after Thanatos did his thing. Was he stern and unpitying? Oh, absolutely. But he was also just, applying his laws to every single soul, no exceptions.
And this is why the Greeks were so afraid of him. Not because he was malicious, but because of what his realm represented. The gloomy, inescapable finality of it all. There's this amazing line in Homer's Odyssey where the ghost of the great hero Achilles tells Odysseus he'd rather be the lowest servant on earth than be the king of all the dead. That's how much they dreaded going to his kingdom.
Of course, you really can't tell the story of Hades without talking about his most famous myth, and his equally famous and powerful queen, Persephone.
Now, this story is often told as just a violent kidnapping, and, it was. But for the ancient Greeks, it served a much deeper purpose. It was really an origin story, a foundational myth that was designed to explain why the world works the way it does. And specifically, it explains the seasons.
So the deal that Zeus hammered out was this. Because Persephone ate the food of the dead, even just a single pomegranate seed, she was now bound to the underworld forever. She had to spend part of the year down there with her husband, Hades. And that period, when her mother, Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, is mourning her absence, that's when the earth becomes cold and barren. It's what we call winter.
So, okay, if Hades wasn't a villain, then what was he? Well, the Greeks themselves actually gave us the answer in the other names they used for him.
His actual name, Hades, probably means something like the Unseen One. It's a direct reference to the fact that his kingdom was totally hidden from the world of the living. The Greeks were actually so reluctant to even say his name, for fear of attracting his attention, that they came up with all sorts of nicknames for him.
And one of his most common titles was Pluton, which means the rich one. And why? Because all the wealth of the earth, we're talking precious metals, minerals, and even the fertile soil that helps crops grow, it all comes from his underground domain. So he wasn't just the king of the dead, he was also the ultimate source of the world's hidden riches.
So, let's put it all together.
The real mythological Hades was a legitimate king who got his job by a roll of the dice. He was a stern, impartial administrator, a keeper of cosmic balance. He was a source of the Earth's hidden wealth, and most importantly, he was basically a reflection of death itself, totally unavoidable and final, but not actually evil.
And all of this brings us to one last thought. The transformation of Hades from this stern, immovable king into a wisecracking, cartoonish villain, well, it says very little about the ancient Greeks. But what does it say about us? What does our modern need for a villain in the underworld reveal about how we grapple with the idea of a final, unyielding end?